Oh god, do we love imports here at SwitchWatch. The Nintendo Switch being region-free has been both a blessing and a curse. A blessing that we can get amazing games that Western publishers don't want to take risks on, but a curse on our bank accounts because we just want them all, and my wife just won't let me. 2019 has been a great year for Switch imports, and because there are so many, we're gonna rank the best ones available for you to show you exactly where your money is best spent on getting these Asian delights. Before we get into the fully ranked list, we're gonna dish out some short honorable mentions that didn't quite make the main list for various reasons, not essential imports, but still worth a gander. Honorable mentions. Oninaki, one of Square Enix's latest JRPGs produced by RPG Factory. This is an action take on the genre that didn't quite make the full list due to the fact that it did actually receive a very limited release in the West, only available on Square Enix's website, I believe. The Japanese version, however, is far more readily available and has English on the cartridge. River City Girls again received a Western release thanks to limited run games, but that order period is now over and can only be bought from eBay and such. But the Asian release, which has English, is readily available for import. Juan reviewed this one and absolutely loved it. The Fruit, Labyrinth, and Eden of Grisia is here because even though I've heard it's popular, I haven't actually played it myself and I know very little about it. Well, I say it, but it is actually a collection of 3 games in the trilogy. I think it's mostly visual novel stuff, supposedly popular enough, but I can't add them to the main list due to not confirming the quality myself. River City Melee Mach seems to be a neat little party brawler, cheap and cheerful, and supports English in its Asian release. But again, it doesn't seem like one of the essential Switch imports from this year. Valhalla cyberpunk bartender action is a visual novel that promises booze, waifus, technology, and dystopian life. Need I say more? I would put this on the main list due to its awesomeness, but limited run games have just recently put it up for pre-order. But I got my Asian version with English and the amazing cover art. If you don't fancy waiting around for a limited run, then the import is an option for you. Doraemon Story of Seasons is a game in which Juan lost his life to when he reviewed it in its Western release. This didn't quite make the full list due to it being available physically in Europe and Australia. Only North America didn't get the physical release, but it's not that difficult to get their hands on a European version. Links are below if you fancy it. Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon is a game that I've had my eyes on for a while. You may have seen me mention it once or twice in some videos that I've done, mainly due to its name, but also because it's supposedly a mystery dungeon style game, which is one of my favorite genres. But since the Japanese release doesn't have English, we're currently waiting on the Asian version, which does have English, and we've yet to get our hands on it sadly. Hopefully by the time you actually see this video and it's uploaded to YouTube, it might be in our hands, but we can't put it in the main list just yet. And finally, as daft as it sounds, we have a game that's not even out yet. Espera de Psi is cutting it close for a 2019 release, as it's coming later in December. Far too late to be included in this video's main list, although I'm sure if I played it by the time this went out, this hardcore shmup would probably have been on the main list. This is definitely for the hardcore shooter fan only though, with a price to reflect. The only way this looks to be missable is if the price is too much for you. There's gonna be a standard edition as well as an even more expensive collector's edition. Shmup fans, who's got this ordered? Show yourselves. Links are in the pinned comment if you want to check it out. Okay guys, those are the honorable mentions. Are you ready for the essentials? Just a heads up, if any of these games here have taken your fancy, then you can find links below in the pinned comment and in the description. These are affiliate links which help us out massively. So if you're gonna buy any of them anyways, and you appreciate the work that we do, consider using our links below. You would be incredibly awesome. And by the way, it's completely coincidental, but at the time of this video's release, PlayAsia are still just about having their Black Friday mega sale. And so many of these games have had some amazing discounts going on. 20%, 25%, even like 40% off the standard price. So now really is the best time to import. Check our links below if something takes your fancy. You have until the 4th of December before prices go back to normal, so not long left. Okay, Bottom of the list, but not exactly a slouch, we have Dead or School. This is a side-scrolling hack and slash with a ludicrous story with an interesting concept. It's a game that's incredibly rough around the edges, but there's something about it that makes it compelling to play as you explore underground Tokyo, defeating zombie-like mutants and trying to reach the surface because you want to go to school. It's ropey but charming, and I advise you to check out my review after this video if you're curious about it. It's worth a look at least, as perhaps the visuals don't quite do it justice. Coming in slightly lower than many people would probably be expecting, Psikyo's Shooting Library Volume 1 and Volume 2. Yes, these are two collections of 12 incredible games, classic shmups, both vertical, horizontal, hell, even omnidirectional. They are low on this list for a couple of reasons. One, there's already been separate collections of these games from last year, although separated into 3 volumes, offering slightly less value, so these two versions are definitely the better of the two collections. But also, number 2, early next year, NIS America will be publishing them in the West in nice enough collector's editions, although with a higher price. Personally, I'd still go with these 2 volumes here because they have more value for your money. Still, not as essential imports as some of the later ones in this list. I sadly only have the first volume due to, budgetary reasons, but volume 2 probably has the better collection of the games overall. I will get to it one day. God, I love Gunbird. Another retro-esque collection, we have one of the more recent imports in this list, Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. 3 classic Dragon Quest games in one collection, how could I say no? I even bought them digitally first and then physically second, just because I can't resist a good retro collection. Yes, they are archaic these days, and I'm pretty much the only person who actually likes the new art style here, but for me, the chance to own legendary games physically with English, yes, please. And we know plenty of you guys out there feel the same way, as the affiliate links that we posted in our review has been the second most popular purchase from you guys since we started doing them. Thank you, by the way, you're just incredible. Next up, another collection. It seems to be a theme with these essential imports. Maybe Western publishers think that we don't want classic older games put together. But anyways, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trilogy is just a collection that I couldn't say no to. I've played all 3 of these games perhaps 2 or 3 times each, but to get them again, all together, 1 cartridge, English, yes please, and since I have a bad memory, it's always like playing them fresh every time. I mean, this cartridge has 60 hours of legendary stories, characters, perhaps the best involved visual novel out there. If you disagree, I think me and you need to take it outside. If you haven't played these before, what are you doing? Are you enjoying this list so far? Well, good news is that it's just going to get even tastier and your bank account is going to get even emptier. But before that, consider subscribing to our Switch channel if you're new. We do Switch reviews and features like bargains and all the physical releases on a week-by-week basis. Plus, we do import reviews, which is probably how you've stumbled upon this video thanks to the algorithm gods. Plus, once we hit 50,000 subscribers, we're giving away a Nintendo Switch Lite to one of you lucky buggers. We are less than halfway through this list, and this is the 3rd time we're mentioning a Square Enix release in the video, and let me tell you, there's plenty more to come. Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon is a remake of Final Fantasy Fable's Chocobo's Dungeon, a mystery dungeon style game where you have a cute Chocobo that can use job classes and use monsters to accompany him through the handful of dungeons in this game. Classic gameplay, cute charm. I love this genre and I love Chocobos. You can't go wrong with this lovely physical copy, only available in Japan. Now, I mentioned the Black Friday sale on PlayAsia, and while the majority of this list are affected in some way, Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon is almost 40% off, so if you're on the fence, now is not the time to miss it. Check the links below. If personal bias was allowed in this video, and if Juan and James wouldn't tell me off for being a very naughty boy, then the Final Fantasy VII and VIII double pack would easily be in the top of the charts. This Asian region exclusive contains the evergreen classic Final Fantasy VII and the red-headed stepchild that is Final Fantasy VIII. Personally, VII is my favorite game of all time, and to own it physically once more, this time on a Nintendo console, is just, whoa, mind-blowing. I also actually love Final Fantasy VIII, even though it's incredibly daft game in terms of mechanics. I have bought and played both digitally on the Switch, but that wasn't going to stop me from picking them up on the cartridge with English. Omega Labyrinth Life's most unfortunate thing is actually its biggest selling point. It's a very risque game with fondling climaxes and all-round lewdness, something I'm fine with personally because, it's hilarious, but it's sad that it scared many people away from what is a fine mystery dungeon style game. While it's slightly on the basic side even compared to Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon, which in itself is simple, you've got yourself a very competent entry in the genre. I've placed this one higher due to it being a far more interesting prospect. It's also not a remake of an old game. It's also a game that needs far more love in the West, and importing will perhaps show the publisher's demand for a Western physical release. There's also an incredibly interesting collector's edition alongside the standard release. The collector's edition features a steelbook, soundtrack CD, and of course, the classic 3D mousepad. Links to both of them are below. World of Final Fantasy Maxima is a peculiar import because it arrived so far after the game was released digitally everywhere and was only released physically in Southeast Asia. But luckily for us import fiends, that sole release has English on the cartridge. I immediately snapped it up. It's a very quirky take on Final Fantasy, but perhaps one of the best spin-offs of the series, easily up there with Final Fantasy Tactics in terms of quality. I highly recommend this one if you're a fan of JRPGs. It's one of the least spoken about imports too, but one of the most essential ones for collectors, no question. Interestingly, it's also one of the very few games in this list that I've missed out on reviewing. SD Gundam G Generation Crossrays is a game that intrigued me from the very start. Anime? Check. Mechs? Check. Bandai Publishing? Check. While I usually don't give a monkeys about the first two things, combine them with Bandai and the strategy game genre, you've got my attention and probably my entire wallet. I have to admit that while putting this video together, I've only had short hands-on time with my copy so far, so I can't give a definitive verdict on it. I still can say that I'm very happy this import is in my collection. If you like Bandai's other anime strategy games, you will love this. Very similar in gameplay and style with an animation style that can't help but pull those nostalgia strings, even if you're not nostalgic about it like me. Hopefully by the time this video does go out, maybe I'll have my review up. If not, stick around because I'm sure it won't be long coming. One of the most significant imports this year was that of Final Fantasy X and X Part 2. Now I know what you're thinking, this was given a physical release in the West, and that is partially true, except that the Western release was total garbage and unacceptable. Why? Well, because only Final Fantasy X was on the cartridge while X-2 needed to be downloaded. Sometimes that's an unfortunate consequence of games being too large for available space, but Square Enix Japan and Asia decided to humiliate Europe and North America by fitting both games on one cartridge, no download required. Yes, they went out of their way to choose the costlier, largest cartridge to fit everything together in a complete package for the consumer. That's what we want. The Western branches were only thinking about profit margins, while the East were thinking about the gamers. This is the import that people need to show that unnecessary downloads are anti-consumer and not what we want. If you want to buy these two classic JRPGs, then the Asian import is the only way in my eyes. And when we reviewed this package and offered affiliate links, my word did you guys show it. It's been by far the most popular purchase from you amazing supporters. You know how to own your game, guys. Links are below if you're still on the lookout. Before we get into our final couple of imports to finish off this list, I just want to give a quick dishonorable mention to a certain game. Dead or Alive Extreme 3 Scarlet. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, and it definitely has its audience. You know, a certain type of gentleman. No judgments, but this is one of the more popular imports this year, but not one I can actually recommend for the gameplay. But I suppose, let's face it, it's not really about the gameplay, is it? I can't recommend it, but it's an extremely popular game, so I thought I would give it a quick mention in this video. Alright guys, the top two of our imports list for 2019 are going hand in hand, talking about them at the same time. Super Robot Wars V, and then right at the top, Super Robot Wars T. These are two excellent specimens of the veteran Super Robot Wars series, a franchise that has almost never made its way westwards despite having like 50 games in the series. It's a crossover strategy RPG series that is just a wonder to behold. It's like playing an anime. The battle animations are as epic as they come, and the crossover stories are an anime fan's wet dream. I don't care about mechs, I don't have much investment in anime, but I friggin' love these games, and as they are available for import with English on the cartridge, I feel that they are the most essential imports this year. Since they are so similar though, you may want to choose one at first. V is an older game that was recently ported to the Switch, while T was a brand new entry that came earlier this year. For me, T is marginally better, so I'd say go for that one first. And if you love it as much as me, you may not be able to help yourself to a dollop of V, and perhaps in January next year, when another slightly older port is arriving in the form of Super Robot Wars X. Oh god, I can't wait. I hope you've enjoyed this list. We'd appreciate a comment to show it. Plus, if any of these have taken your fancy, then consider using the links in the pinned comment and description, as they really are the best way to show support for us. We hope you've had a great year importing, and we can't wait to see what Eastern delights await us in 2020. I hope you'll join us on our importing adventure. Be sure to check out our playlist of many of the games mentioned here. I've reviewed most of them, so it's helpful if you're looking for a bit more depth on each game. We'll see you guys over there. Take care.